So, welcome to Lasers, Dragons, and Keyboards. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh Hart.
And
I'm
I'm
Jean
Liberty Heart.
Rabe.
And I'm Liberty Heart. And Aaron, I have a tech thing. We don't have the image up. There we go.
Yeah, it is. It's coming.
Okay, it's there now. Yay!
So today on the show, we have Jean Rabe, um, who is a longtime author of everything from fantasy to urban fantasy to mysteries. She writes with dogs wrapped around her feet, uh, which she likes because she gets to wear sandals or bedroom slippers to work and old comfortable clothes. Um, She writes mysteries and fantasies because life is too short to be limited to one genre. Jean is a recipient of the Faust Award, the Grandmaster Award of the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers, and the Illinois Author Project Soon to Be Famous Award. She's been on the USA Today's bestseller list a few times. So, welcome, Jean.
Hey,
Hello.
ignore the barking. They saw something outside.
It's probably a
Oh,
squirrel. Get it, get it,
squirrel!
get it.
In our case, it's usually just a leaf that moves.
Yep. Uh,
so,
Jean also is a fan of dogs and has four of them. So,
as we were
Which on
discussing
occasion is
pre-show.
four too many.
yeah.
So, welcome to the show, Jean. We're great. Happy to have you here today. So,
Well, thanks for inviting me.
yeah. So we'll just get launched right into our questions. So we always like to start off with what is your name, what is your quest, and what is your favorite color?
My name is Jean Erlene Rabe, sometimes J.E. Mooney for editing projects. Once wrote under a dog's name when I wrote something really racy. And my quest is to write more books.
All right.
I think you're well on your way to that goal.
50 some right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, is that all?
Some under a couple of pen names.
Yeah.
That was fun too.
So, what is your latest project among the 50 or so?
Hang on a second. Jolly. The smallest dog is the noisiest.
Yep.
My
Yeah.
husband is off gaming today, so he can't keep him in the other room. Um, my current project, what I'm working on right now, is a fantasy novel, a sequel to my Goranth the Mighty book that I wrote with Craig Martell. And this one I'm
Okay.
just doing on my own, and it's set in the winter, so I'm suitably motivated. And then on the side, I'm outlining another Piper book.
Nice.
Yeah, I just read the first Piper book. That was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They got better after that. That was
Oh,
my
okay.
my first foray into Midwestern mysteries.
Nice. Is that a cozy mystery then?
Um, I'll, when I took it to agents before I sold it to the first publisher, um, the agents called it an uncozy cozy. They said that it
That's a
was
good description
too,
of it. Yeah.
yeah, they said it was too violent to be a cozy, and
Mm-hmm.
and yet it was a police procedural. And a couple of them said, I don't think I can market that because it's not a police procedural and it's not a cozy. It's like a combination. So
Hmm.
I sold it to a publisher in Canada who was
Huh.
quick to take it up.
Yeah.
And it was only going to be a one shot. I was inspired. I was writing fantasy at the time, but I had this idea. It
Mm-hmm.
just kept poking at me. And I had to write the mystery. So I wrote the mystery. And then the book did so well to this publisher that she says, okay, now the next one. And you need to title it The Dead of Night. Um, it was originally titled The Christmas Card Killer, but You said that I had limited my sales ability on it by putting Christmas in the title.
Yeah.
So we changed it
Mm.
to the dead of
Yeah.
winter, and then she said, "Now you got to do the dead of night." So I wrote the dead of night. The publisher became really ill and closed, and so
Aw.
I decided to self-publish them because I didn't want to wait to the whole 18 months for somebody else to look at it and sit on their desk.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
been doing really well. But that's how it started, with just one book. I was going to write under a different name to differentiate my fantasy from my
Mhm.
mystery, because I had had another agent tell me, I'd rep you for fantasy, but not mystery, because you don't have a proven track record in mystery.
Sure.
And so I thought, well, okay. And Laura Resnick, a fellow author, told me, don't write under a pen name, just use Jean Rabe, because I probably would pull my fantasy readers over, which apparently I have.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's weird to me that the industry focuses on, yeah, there's this genre and this genre, and they're always separate.
Yeah, they do.
And to me as a reader, and to all the other people, well, most other people I've talked to, oh yeah, I read in this genre and this genre and this genre. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if the world actually reads, everything, why separate all that out? But yeah.
Well, and it's been my experience on both sides of the pages, I guess, that people like that blend. Whether it's, one author that writes multiple genres, or, a book or a series that is multiple genres. So,
Yeah. And I put, I can't help myself. I have a gaming geek is one of my characters in my mystery books.
woohoo!
And I had collectible card games and a comic shop. And
Mhm.
so I get the geek factor in. The character is even called Zeke the Geek. And
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
and I can tell I got my fantasy readers in it, because I will get emails about Zeke and his side exploits.
I'm gonna have to pick this up now because mystery is kind of where I cut my teeth
Oh, you'll like it, yeah.
with
Yeah.
writing, and I kind of write hybrid sci-fi mysteries now. But I'm working on a cozy that has a heavy sci-fi influence. So I
Every genre has a mystery in it,
yeah,
if
they
it's a
really
good
do.
tale.
hmm
Yeah.
I agree completely. So, Aaron,
All right. Next question is: do you have a favorite scene or character? I can't talk today.
Oh,
Josh just deleted the question. Do you have a
From
favorite?
my current,
Let me take
from
this.
my,
Yeah, from the current one. Do you have a favorite scene or character
I've
from the one
got
you're working
two.
on?
This is my book that just came out, and I open it with a raging house fire and my chief deputy trying to save all of his cats.
aw,
And
oh,
I have a writers group, and we we meet a couple of times a month, and we read our chapters to get our results. And so I read my first chapter to my writers group, and one of the members said I had her in tears,
oh.
because she was so terrified what I was going to do to the character and all these cats.
You're sitting there going,
And so
yes.
I thought, that's cool. I got a good
Mhm.
chapter.
yeah.
And I used to cover fires when I was a news reporter, so I had a pretty good background in how they worked.
hmm
So I got to do that. And in my work in progress, of all things, my favorite scene is a big bar fight.
Hmm.
I don't typically say that's a favorite scene. It's like, oh, it's another bar fight. But no, I had fun with this one, and it was violent.
That's
Well,
always fun when you have something that's kind of out of the ordinary, though.
It was an audition. It was an
Yeah.
audition. The guy got the bar to fight to see who was left standing so he could hire them.
Oh,
Interesting.
very
That'll work.
cool.
Yeah.
So Aaron, Liberty, and I are all gamers. And for D&D culture, whatever, you have your role players, and then you have your we like the fight. You know,
Yes.
but when it comes to authoring, it's fun to have the fight scenes that aren't typical. So I like that. You know,
Thank you.
yeah.
So, Jean, when you finish the draft, what does your editing process look like? Do you just send it off to an editor? What does that look like for you?
Well, because I have a writers group and we
Hmm.
go through chapters, I catch a lot of things, or they catch a lot of things, and I fix them.
Yeah.
And I worked so many years as an editor. I still edit books on the side. Um, so my manuscripts are pretty clean,
Hmm.
but I always hire an editor and a copy editor to go through my books before I publish them.
Okay.
I've seen too many self-published books just riddled with mistakes, and the authors have told me that they can't afford to pay for an editor. And I think, how can you not afford
Yeah.
to pay for an editor? You can find some reasonable priced editors out there with really good track records,
Hmm.
because I want to put out stuff that's good. Even when I pull, I found typos in Michael Connolly's Harry Bosch books.
Oh
This is
yeah,
Mhm.
New
it's
York Times best-selling hardcover.
I've
Uh,
seen them in Nora
page
Roberts books
42.
myself, so I
Yeah,
understand.
those darn
Yeah.
things slip through
yeah,
everywhere.
Hmm.
yeah,
My
yeah.
latest book, I had my writing group go through it. I had an editor go through it, and then somebody else go through it just again. All right, it's good. We'll put it out. And then my son was reading it. He says, "Hey, you got a typo on the first page." I'm like, oh, how did it slip through all these people?
Yeah. Um,
So yeah, I think editing is a big deal. People want to buy a clean manuscript. I mean, if you're buying a book,
Yeah.
if you're buying a book, I don't
yeah.
hesitate to buy self-published books from authors I know who have track records. And you can tell, you can read the reviews on Amazon. And when the reviews on Amazon say loaded with typos, I'm like, okay, not that one.
Hmm.
Yeah. I have found that I have gotten emails from people that are either acquaintances or friends after they've read my book and be like, "Oh, you have a typo here." Even my cousin has done it to me before. It's like, and I've had editors and copy editors, proofreaders. And it's like I have no idea how they made it through. So
Yeah.
just get it
Most
as
of
clean
them
as
don't
possible.
read backwards.
Yeah.
I think a really good copy editor needs to read the book from the back.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And you're
Interesting.
I'd never heard
focusing
of
on
that.
the words. Yeah, you're focusing. That's just one of the things that I do. You focus on the words and not the sentence, because your mind can see things that your mind will read a sentence for you,
Hmm.
you know, and not notice the extra it, or not notice that there's a missing apostrophe.
That's a
Hmm.
good tip. Yeah.
But if you go from the back up and look at the words,
You will have to keep that in mind.
I'm an old dog. I've been doing this a long time.
You know what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a tip we'd never heard of before, and it's a great one.
Hmm.
So in the midst of editing and all that, let's talk about what you do for marketing, especially considering you've bounced between self-publishing and like,
Traditional.
yeah, traditional big house.
Yeah. It's rough. You know, even traditional published authors have to self-promote because
Mhm.
it's a different game now. Um, when I was traditionally published, I had to promote myself in addition to what the company did. It's if you look at Facebook, Preston and Child are big thriller mystery authors, and you
Mhm.
will see ads that they buy and put on Facebook. And
Mhm.
that's not their publisher doing it. So, and a lot of authors have a presence on Facebook because they can announce things about their books, and that's advertising.
Mhm.
So you can just, scroll through the feeds and see, here's my new book. And the nice thing is, it's not a platform that costs you. There are a bunch of platforms out there that help you that don't have a cost. Fussy Librarian,
Mhm.
Goodreads. I have an issue
Mhm.
with Goodreads. I should promote myself much better on Goodreads, but it seems so invasive to me because my email pops up with, see what your friends are reading. I'm
Mhm.
like, isn't that their business?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's their
Goodreads.
business what they're reading.
Yeah, in my opinion, Goodreads was a lot better before Amazon bought them. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm not a big fan of Goodreads, but I buy ads. I look and see where the best results are for ads. Sometimes I will buy these Kindle ads
Mhm.
that when they have those on specials. I've had BookBub ads. BookBubs is wonderful. It's very expensive,
Mhm.
but you get your money back and you get a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
I do a newsletter. I try to get that out once a month. It has a ton of subscribers, and that's usually a good way to talk about the books that you've got out, what you're working on, what's next, and what you've been reading from other people that you recommend. Occasional recipe and pictures of my dogs.
Yeah. So, what do you use for your newsletter? Because there's Substack, and I
MailerLite,
can't remember.
Mailchimp, etc.
I use Mailchimp, and
Okay.
there's maybe better ones out there, but when I started my newsletter a few years ago, I picked Mailchimp, and so I got all these names, and I don't know how I would transfer them to a new service.
Mhm.
Which is fair.
So I just keep using Mailchimp, and they have all these templates, so I can
Mhm.
like, oh, I want to try that one this time. Yeah, I know they should all look the same, shouldn't they? But I like, but
It
I
depends
don't
on who
write
you
in the
ask.
same
Yeah.
genre. I switch genres sometimes. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that looks pretty. Let's try that one today.
Well, and that's part of your marketing, or part of your, I don't know what you'd call it, persona or whatever. It's just like, I want to try this today,
Yeah,
both in writing and
Mhm.
in newsletter.
yeah.
Uh,
It's like when I was wanting to write mysteries, and um, a couple of agents that I met with said, "Well, are you going to also write fantasy?" And I said, "Yeah, because I like writing fantasy. Maybe the occasional urban fantasy. I like that. I picked up an award for one of my urban fantasy books, and I like writing thrillers. I like writing westerns, but I'll do that as short stories, and military fiction. I've done that as short stories, and they told me, Gene, you got to stick to one genre. If you stick to one
no.
genre, you'll do better." I said, but life is so short. I want to write all of these things.
Hmm.
Why should I have to just write one thing
Yeah.
when I can write all these
Exactly.
things?
Exactly. So, something I'm curious about is it seems like you've co-written a few books with other authors. Craig Martell, I know you mentioned.
He's
Um,
great fun to work with.
I'm friends with him on Facebook. I've never had the pleasure of meeting him in person, but he seems like an awesome guy.
He is
Um,
awesome, awesome.
yeah. So, what's been your experience in working with all the different people that you've co-authored with? I mean, have you found that you have a system that works best, or
I
I'm
will occasionally work with somebody, but
mhm,
co-authoring with someone is often twice the work for half the pay.
I
I
understand.
had yeah, it's something Tim Zahn told me years ago, and it proved me right. He proved me right. Sometimes in a co-author relationship, um, I find myself doing most of the work. Maybe that's because I write fast. Maybe that's because I set deadlines and hammer to it. Uh, Don Bingle was easy to work with. He writes a lot. I wrote the Love Hate Case Files with him. We picked up 3 awards for those. So that was kind
Wow.
of cool.
Mhm.
Um, so Don was good to write with. Craig was great to write with.
Mhm.
I wrote a Shadowrun book with John Helfers that wrote really fast. We traded chapters back and forth, and that was fun. But a lot of other projects I've had, I was frustrated with. So yeah, Tim Zahn was right. It's often twice the work for half the pay.
Well, maybe you just need to work with your husband because Josh and I are writing or working on a co-written series together. So
My husband doesn't even read books, so that's
Oh,
not
Oh
gonna.
no.
yeah, my ex-husband was like that. So I understand. So,
Yeah.
He used to,
mhm.
but he discovered computer gaming.
that's still
Yeah,
stories, kinda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I started gaming about what 3 years ago, I guess. So I understand. I don't write near as much as I used to, probably because of that, but also my life
my
has changed.
first game was before you were born. I played Dungeons and Dragons in 1975.
Oh, you were one of the early
Whoa.
adopters.
It was in a con suite at the very first WindyCon in downtown Chicago.
Okay.
It's also
Hmm.
where I met Joe Haldeman.
Okay.
Okay.
But I was in high school, teenager. My parents drove me and a friend up and dropped
Mhm.
me off at the hotel because they supported my science fiction habit. And they said, don't leave the hotel. This is Chicago. You live in the hotel. We'll pick you up Sunday afternoon.
Mhm.
So we didn't leave the hotel. And at night, the science fiction programming shut down. There were
Hmm.
all these people in the hall drinking beer and stuff. And I was a good kid, you know. Like, I'm too young, I can't drink. But I found a Dungeons and Dragons game on the floor in the con suite. And they taught me how to play. And it was with those little original
Hmm.
pamphlets. I had great fun. And then when I went off to college, I looked for a D&D group.
Awesome. That
Yeah.
is so cool.
Hmm.
That is neat.
Yeah,
So
Josh actually just mentioned what 2-3 weeks ago D&D was celebrating their 50th anniversary. So
yeah.
you were very early.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And your like some of your first books were Dragonlance novels, right?
Yeah, my very first novel was Forgotten Realms, Red
Mhm.
Magic. And then I did a couple of pick a paths, and they asked where I wanted to go next. And I said, I really love Dragonlance. And so they
Mhm.
gave me a shot over there.
All
Had to
right.
audition. They had open calls. You know, you weren't just,
Wow.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
you
wondering
weren't
how you got
just,
into those. Yeah.
it took me 3 go arounds, 3 open auditions before I could land a book.
Wow.
And I did it because I overheard some conversations from editors talking about submissions they received, and they were tired of books where they didn't hit all 5 senses in the
Mhm.
first few
Hmm.
pages. So the next audition, I hit all 5 senses in 2.5 pages. Just to see if that would make a difference.
Mhm.
I set it in a place where they'd not had a book set before. One of my main characters was a centaur that hadn't been used before. I just thought I would try to push, try to push some buttons. I got called in and said they wanted me to rewrite
Ooh.
my sample chapters. So I did. And then they called me in again. They said, okay, we're going to give you this book. And by the way, you beat out Diane Duane.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, holy shit. Holy shit. Because I was reading her. She wrote Star Trek books
Oh, yeah, a lot of
and,
them, yeah.
and other stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
The Young
oh
Wizard
my.
series and yeah, a bunch of stuff, yeah.
I was like, oh my. So I was just like dancing. Came
I
home and
would
told my
imagine,
husband, and
yeah.
he said, who's Diane Duane? I said, never
Oh,
mind.
no.
All right. Now I have the D10 for random questions. It used to be a D6, but then we added some.
So what happens if you roll a 10, though? That's what I want
We
to know.
reroll.
All right. So one of our new questions: which three authors would you sit down with for a monthly lunch?
Oh, can I pick dead people?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. First on my list would be Gene Wolfe.
Okay.
You familiar with him?
I've heard the
A
name.
little bit.
He's like so big time. You should Google him. And then you should pick up Shadow of the Torturer. Just incredible. I met him at a World Horror Con in Chicago. I had driven down from Wisconsin for the day. Him and Neil Gaiman were the guests of honor. And I wanted to meet Gene Wolfe. I probably should have wanted to meet Neil Gaiman, who I ended up meeting and being friends with too. But Gene Wolfe just so impressed me. So I went to his seminar. I'm probably telling you too much, right? I'm just blabbering. I went to his seminar, and he was doing a writing workshop. And so he asked his audience, he said, I want to know where you guys stand in your writing career so I can tailor what I want to talk about. And he'd say, raise your hand if you've had anything published. And so everybody in the room had something published. There were a lot of people in here, right? And then he said, raise your hand if you've had a book published. Well, there were like 6 people with hands up, and I was one of them. And he said, raise your hand if you've had more than one book published. And my hand was still up. He pointed at me and he said, how many books have you had published? And I said, 6. And then he pointed at me and he said, you get up here on the podium with me. I can't teach you anything.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I turned around and looked to see if I could just sneak out. He's crooking his finger at me. So I ended up on this podium, this stage with Gene Wolfe. And I'm like, my knees are knocking. I'm thinking, this is the Gene Wolfe.
Yeah.
And so we had a grand time up there, and we got to be friends ever since.
That's cool.
And so we regularly, every couple of weeks, got together at a Cracker Barrel for breakfast. And
Wow.
yeah, he would always order the Sunrise Sampler, and I would either get oatmeal or sourdough French toast, except on days when they had pecan pancakes with pecan syrup. Then we both got that because Mr. Wolfe was from Texas and was really big on pecans. So we would do that every couple of weeks until he died.
Wow.
So he's number 1 on my list. That was incredible. Number 2 would be Elizabeth Vaughn, one of my best friends. She's a fantasy romance author who I met at a Gen Con. And number 3 would be Joe Haldeman because he's fascinating and wonderful and talks like a poet.
Cool.
I have a great Joe Haldeman story if you got a minute.
Sure.
Sure.
So Beth and I are at a World Fantasy Convention, and Joe Haldeman's with us, and we're talking in the convention suite, and just talking, having a good time. And Joe asks, what book is your favorite book? Something stick out at you?" And I said, "Fever Dream" by George R. Martin. And I said, "When I read that, I decided I wanted to write fiction for a living." And he said, "Jean, when I read that, I decided I should quit." Um,
Yeah.
so we talked. So we ended up talking about how marvelous this book was, that he missed his next panel. But it was fun, and it was a good memory. So those are the three people I would go out to breakfast with.
Nice.
Okay.
Aaron, do you want to roll the next?
Yeah, if Josh can roll for me, I don't happen to have a die handy at the moment.
All right.
What do
We
we
just
got?
did that one.
Okay. Reroll.
There we go.
What number we got?
We have number 9.
Number 9. What refills your creative well?
Weeding, because I really
Yeah.
don't like to weed. I absolutely hate to pull weeds. It gives me no joy, and it certainly doesn't give the weeds any joy. And I realize with every weed that I pull that I should be writing. And
Okay.
so I go write.
That makes
That
sense.
works.
Yeah.
That's a unique answer, but I understand. So, so who is your captain?
Ahab.
That's an interesting answer. I don't think we've got that one before, have we?
I don't think we have either.
What do you usually get?
I mean, I think Captain Picard or Captain Kirk are pretty high on the list usually.
Yeah, we've had them from all over, though. But
Oh yeah, we have. We've had
Yeah.
Mal Reynolds. We've had all kinds of answers, but yeah, that one's definitely not. I think that you're the first. So
Ahab is, yeah, that's a fascinating answer.
a particular reason behind that one?
Driven,
Okay.
compulsive.
Yeah.
Yeah, driven.
yeah.
Maybe unreasonably so, but
Oh, cool.
So, what is what is up next for you?
well, I got to finish this Goranth book, and I'm at a part of the book where I'm like, you know, it's a journey. A lot of fantasy books have a journey in them.
Mhm.
So I'm going to make it a kind of short journey, because too many journeys, right? So they got to climb a
Yeah.
mountain. And I've been doing research on mountain climbing with medieval type equipment, and it's kind of interesting. And so then I have to figure in where to throw in some type of a beast, and I have giant goats, because I just think giant goats are cool,
Yeah.
Giant goats are cool. And if they run out of food, you can always kill one of the giant goats and eat it. So that's what I'm struggling with. I'm like, oh, I gotta get them up the mountain, and all the cool stuff is going to be inside the mountain, but I have to find a way to make the up the mountain. Wow,
Yeah, they're
it's just
just
got to
a
be wow.
slug, and yeah.
Yeah, they've had this big bar fight so that survivors can get hired to go up the mountain, and so it's got to be wow. I just like want wow, 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 wow through this book. So that's what I'm having with, and next up is, and at the same time I'll outline my friggin' next Piper book. I figured where I'm going to put the body.
Okay.
Now I've got to figure out a title I think I'll do a newsletter and throw some suggestions out there and let my readers pick the title.
It's a good way to do it.
That'd be fun too. Yeah.
Definitely a good idea.
And she's going to go on her honeymoon finally. So I haven't decided, do I send them up to Door County, Wisconsin, which I'm familiar with, or do I send them to Portugal? I play board games online with this lady that I've become good friends with in Portugal. So I could send them to Portugal and she could tell me where they go.
That's not a bad idea either.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very much so out of their element, and yeah.
Yep.
And it would be warm, and there would be a beach, and it would be like, oh, there's a spy museum over there that would be fun.
Yeah.
There's beaches in Wisconsin too.
Yeah, but I would live in the middle of Illinois.
Freshwater, no sharks.
Middle of Illinois. And we had a big snow, 6 inches all over my yard. My dogs don't want to go outside.
Yeah, we got some of that yesterday. We got like a trace.
Yeah, all the snow melted here, and then night before last it snowed again. Like,
Yep.
So, Jean, where can we go to learn more about you and all of your 50 plus books?
I'm on Facebook as Jean Rabe. My webpage is jeanrabe.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter off my webpage. My webpage has a blog. I need to do another blog too. So you guys are reminding me of all the things that I need to do.
I often find that when we have our sessions, I get reminded of all
Yeah,
the things I need to do too.
making a little checklist over here on the side, and like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to steal that one. And, yeah.
Yep.
Well, Jean, thank you so much for hanging out with us this
Mhm.
morning. It has been a delight having you today. So
I had fun.
Yeah, we did too.
It's been wonderful.
yeah. So Josh, who do we have up next and when?
So coming up next is Laura Van Arendonk Baugh.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
I wouldn't recommend it.
And she's coming
Is
up.
she right?
Fantasy.
Fantasy. She's written some kitsune fantasy, in fact.
Has a new one coming out soon. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And that is March 9th is when she'll be on. So, and then after that, we will have, who do we have after that?
You're the secretary. I don't remember.
Janine,
No, Morgan's to be determined yet.
Janine Ippolito on March 16th.
She's got a fun urban fantasy coming out soon.
Yep. So that's who we have next.
Be sure to check our Facebook page for updates if something changes. But yeah. And that this is Lasers, Dragons, and Keyboards. Does anybody have any announcements they want to make?
Buy my books.
Yeah, buy our books. So
buy everybody's books.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you for being on.
For hanging out with us, Jean. So we will catch everybody in a couple of weeks.
See everybody later.
Yeah.